Disappointment is something every believer faces at one point or another. It creeps in quietly when the prayer goes unanswered, when the door stays shut, when the healing doesn't come, when the dream gets delayed. And if you're not careful, that disappointment can start to whisper lies to your soul. Maybe God forgot about you. Maybe this is it. Maybe it's over. But I came to tell you today, as loud as I can from the depths of my spirit, a disappointment is not defeat hope. It's not the end. It's not a full stop. It's a pause. And just because you're paused doesn't mean you're finished. You see, God never promised the journey would be painless, but He did promise He'd walk with you through every valley, through every storm, through every night of weeping. So stop interpreting God's love by your situation. Your situation can lie. Your pain can lie, but your God cannot. Sometimes we tie our faith to results. If I get the job, God is good. If I get married, God is faithful. If I'm healed, God is real. But what happens when the door doesn't open? Is He still good? Is He still God? Or do we let our disappointment turn into bitterness? Let me tell you, your faith has to grow up. It's got to mature beyond what you feel, because feelings are fickle. But faith, real faith, stands even when the answers don't come. Disappointment is a weight. It settles on your chest and makes you feel like you can't breathe, can't pray, can't move. But listen, weights don't just crush, they also build. Ask anybody who lifts. Resistance is how strength is born. And sometimes God will let the weight stay on you, not to break you, but to build you, to strengthen your spiritual muscles, to stretch your capacity for endurance. You're not dying under it. You're developing under it. Don't confuse God's silence with His absence. Just because He hasn't moved yet doesn't mean He's forgotten you. Sometimes God holds back not because He's cruel, but because He's preparing something greater than what you were praying for. And sometimes He's preparing you to receive it. He knows if He gives it too early, it'll crush you. So He holds it back, not to punish, but to protect, because He sees what you don't. He knows what you can't. And here's the truth most don't like to hear. Sometimes the thing you're disappointed about was never His will in the first place. You wanted it. You chased it. You prayed for it. But God never promised it. You were trying to make it work when God was trying to shut it down. And when it didn't work out, you didn't just get hurt. You got mad at God. But He didn't fail you. He rescued you. You can't let a temporary no become a permanent grudge against heaven. That disappointment you're feeling, don't sit in it too long. Don't camp out in your frustration. Get up from that place and remind yourself, God is still writing my story. This chapter might hurt, but it's not the whole book. Your future is not canceled because of this detour. You're still on track, even if you feel off course. And if you'll hold on through the pain, if you'll keep walking through the fog, you'll find that what you thought was the end was actually the setup. The stage is being built. The curtain is about to rise. You're not being defeated. You're being developed. And in due season, you'll look back at this very moment and say, if it hadn't been for the Lord who was with me, I wouldn't have made it. So dry your tears, straighten your back, wipe off the dust. Oh, disappointment is not defeat. It's just the beginning of a greater revelation. Keep trusting, keep walking. Don't be disappointed with your God. Sometimes we forget that what we see is not all there is. We live inside a frame, but God sees the full canvas. We cry over a page while God holds the whole book. And that's why it's dangerous to judge God based on what you see in the moment. Because what feels like rejection may be protection. What looks like a setback might be divine strategy. Who your perspective is not God's plan, but you prayed for it. You fasted for it. You even told other people it was coming. But instead of breakthrough, you got silence. Instead of doors opening, they slammed shut. And now you're wondering, where is God? Let me tell you, he's exactly where he's always been. Still on the throne, still in control, still working all things together for your good, even if it doesn't feel like it. See, we want answers. We want logic. We want a blueprint. But God says, my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. So stop trying to shrink God's plan down to your limited perspective. You see the now. He sees forever. You see pain. He sees purpose. You see a closed door. He sees the danger behind it. That's why we can't afford to base our faith on our feelings. Our feelings are rooted in the moment, but God is rooted in eternity. It's hard, I know. It's hard to trust when nothing makes sense. It's hard to believe when you're surrounded by unanswered prayers. But hear me, some of the greatest pain comes from trying to force your perspective into God's purpose. You're mad because it didn't happen your way, but the L wasn't supposed to. Your vision was too small. Your plan was too shallow. Your timeline was too early. God loves you too much to let you settle for less than his best. You were looking for a straight road, but he allowed a wilderness. You were praying for ease, but he allowed pressure. And now you're disappointed, not because God failed, but because you didn't understand the path. Let me tell you, just because the route is unfamiliar doesn't mean it's not ordained. God specializes in taking people the long way so they don't fall apart when they reach the promise. The children of Israel didn't go from Egypt to Canaan overnight. They wandered through the desert, not because God was lost, but because he was teaching them, humbling them, testing them, preparing them. If he had taken them straight to the promise, they wouldn't have been able to hold it. Some things are too heavy for you right now, and God knows it. So instead of giving you what you want, he gives you what you need in process. You don't always need a new door. You need a new perspective. Stop asking God your situation and start asking him to change your sight. Because what you call a problem might be the packaging for a promotion. What you call a delay might be a setup. What you call unanswered prayer might be God saying, not now, because I'm building something you're not ready to carry. You may not understand it now, but one day, when you're on the other side, you'll look back and say, I'm so glad God didn't do it when I asked. I'm so glad he didn't give me what I thought I wanted. I'm so glad he didn't let my perspective override his plan. So if you're disappointed, take heart. You're not forgotten. You're not overlooked. You're not behind. You're just being led by a God whose thoughts are higher and whose ways are wiser. And if you'll keep walking, keep trusting, keep believing, one day you'll step into a promise that was far better than anything you could plan. Just don't be disappointed with your God. It's easy to trust God when the sun is shining, when your body feels strong, when the bills are paid, and the doors are swinging wide open. But real faith, true faith, doesn't show up in the light. Real faith is born in the dark. It's forged in silence. It grows when you don't understand, when you don't see a way, and when you have to walk without answers. A faith must work in the dark. Some of the most powerful believers didn't become strong on the mountaintop. They were shaped in the valley. When everything around them was shaken, they learned how to stand. And some of you are in a season right now where nothing feels sure. You're worshiping through tears. You're showing up even when it feels like God didn't. You're holding on to promises when nothing in your life like those promises are coming true. But that is where real faith lies. See, faith is not the ability to manipulate God into doing what you want. It's not a formula. It's not a transaction. Faith is the decision to believe that God is still good, still faithful, even when he's quiet, even when he doesn't explain himself, even when you can't feel him. The greatest test of faith is not how loud you shout in church, but how steady you stand when heaven seems silent. Job lost everything, his family, his health, his wealth. He sat in ashes, scraping his skin, and still he said, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. That's faith in the dark. Abraham waited decades for a child God promised, and when Isaac finally came, God asked for him back. That's faith in the dark. Jesus in Gethsemane, sweating blood, knowing the cross was coming, cried out, Father, if it be your will, take this cup from me. And yet, he still obeyed. That's faith when there's no light at the end of the tunnel. We want miracles without pressure. We want purpose without pain. But growth comes in the stretching. Oil doesn't flow without crushing. Diamonds don't form without heat. You want to see God move in power, but do you trust him in the silence? Do you trust him when the fig tree doesn't blossom? When the healing is delayed? When the breakthrough looks like it's not coming? Can your faith breathe when it's dark? There are some seasons where God won't answer, not because he's left you, but because he's growing you. He wants to see what's in you when there's nothing around you. He wants to see if your praise is rooted in your circumstances or rooted in your conviction. Anybody can sing when the chair's in tune, but can you sing when the lights go out, when the job is gone, when the loved one dies, when the door is locked? The enemy wants to use the dark to destroy you, but God will use it to define you. He'll use it to pull out the kind of faith that can't be shaken. The kind that says, even if he doesn't, I still believe. Even when I don't feel him, I still know he's here. Even when I don't get what I prayed for, I still know he's good. That kind of faith breaks chains. That kind of faith makes demons tremble. So if you're walking through a dark place, don't panic. Don't turn back. Don't let disappointment whisper that God forgot you. You are being shaped in the shadows. You are being trained for what's next. You are being trusted with silence because God knows what he put in you. And if you'll keep walking, even through the dark, you'll find out something powerful. God does some of his best work in the dark. Don't be disappointed with your God. Trust him, even here. We live in a world that teaches us instant gratification. Tap a screen, food shows up. Press a button, music plays. Everything is designed to respond to us quickly, and if it doesn't, we assume something is broken. But God is not like that. God is not a vending machine. He's not obligated to respond just because you press the right buttons. Prayer, fasting, giving. He doesn't move according to formulas. He moves according to his divine will and perfect timing. Some of us have been trained, not in faith, but in spiritual transactions. We think, if I do this, God will do that. But God is not manipulated by our routines. He's not swayed by our performance. He doesn't move just because we got desperate and decided to pray a little harder today. He moves when it aligns with his purpose. And that frustrates us because we're not used to dealing with someone who can't be controlled. You prayed, you sowed, you served, and still nothing changed. Now disappointment is creeping in. You wonder, why isn't he answering me? But hear this, God's silence is not a punishment. It's a test. Can you still trust him when the formula doesn't work? When your schedule doesn't match his sovereign design? When your effort isn't producing immediate results? Faith is not a spiritual transaction. It's a relationship, and relationships require trust. You don't trust someone because they always give you what you want. You trust them because you know who they are. God is not a tool for your convenience. He is the creator of heaven and earth. He does not exist to serve your plans. You were created to fulfill his. Sometimes we confuse his grace with his permission. Just because God has answered us quickly in the past doesn't mean he's bound to our expectations in the future. He's not a genie in a bottle. He is sovereign, eternal, holy, and he will not be reduced to your wish list. That's why it hurts sometimes, because he loves you enough to say no. He loves you enough to say wait. He loves you enough to keep what you're asking for until you're ready for it. You want it now, but God sees what it will cost you later. And because he's a father, not a machine, he cares more about your development than your comfort. It would be easy if all we had to do was insert faith and press a button marked blessing. But then we treat God like a system instead of a savior. If God gave us everything we asked for the moment we asked, we'd never grow. We'd never stretch. We'd never learn to lean. And God doesn't just want to give you things. He wants to shape your character. He wants to teach you to wait, to trust, to believe without conditions. So don't let the delay fool you. Don't let the silence harden you. Don't let the lack of immediate results push you into bitterness. God is still moving, just not on your clock. He's still faithful, just not according to your pattern. And if you're frustrated because you did everything right and still didn't get what you asked for, let me remind you, you're dealing with a king, not a customer service line. Keep praying. Keep believing, but shift your heart. Ask not just for what you want. Ask for the grace to accept his will, because his will is greater than your wish list. His purpose is better than your plan. And what he has for you is so much more than you could earn through effort or transaction. He is not a vending machine. He is your father, your redeemer, your rock. He sees the end from the beginning. And even when you don't get what you want, you can trust. You are never getting less. You're just being positioned for more. So don't be disappointed with your God. Trust him, even when he doesn't respond the way you expected. There comes a moment in your journey with God when you realize, you don't get to choose the process. You may have dreams, goals, prayers, and plans, but how God chooses to bring them to pass is completely up to him. And the truth is, it rarely looks the way you imagined. The path is rarely straight. The process is rarely painless. And if you're not prepared, that gap between expectation and experience can leave you bitter. What better? Many of us were excited about the promise. We shouted over the prophecy. We danced over the vision. But we weren't prepared for the process. We didn't expect the betrayal. We didn't see the delay. We didn't think the healing would take this long. We thought the calling would come without crushing. But God is not just trying to deliver you to the destination. He's preparing you to be able to sustain it once you get there. You wanted promotion. He gave you pruning. You wanted elevation. He gave you endurance. You wanted favor. He gave you fire. And now you're questioning him, not because he lied, but because the route doesn't match your roadmap. But let me remind you of God's process is not punishment, or it is refinement. He knows what needs to come off of you before you step into what he's prepared for you. You were asking for platforms, but he knew you needed patience. You were asking for success, but he saw pride hiding in your heart. So he let some things fall apart, not to destroy you, but detox you. He let some people walk away, not to isolate you, but to protect you, because there are some blessings you can't carry with certain weights still attached. He loves you too much to let you arrive unprepared. And here's the truth you have to settle in your spiriting. God doesn't owe you explanation. He owes you faithfulness, and he's never failed there. But if you keep trying to make sense of everything he's doing, you'll wear yourself out, because God doesn't always move in ways you understand. He often moves in ways that confuse you first before they bless you later. Look at Joseph. He dreamed of ruling, but ended up in a pit, then a prison, forgotten by people he helped, betrayed by his own blood. If you stop the story there, you'd think God abandoned him. But God wasn't late. He was layering the process. Every step, every delay, every disappointment was part of a bigger picture. And when the time was right, God lifted Joseph, not just into power, but into purpose. That's how God works. So don't resist the process. Don't curse the detour. What feels like a delay is often divine design. What looks like failure might be favor in disguise. God is shaping something in you that success alone could never teach. He's building humility, resilience, discernment, qualities that aren't birthed on the mountaintop, but in the valley. And the longer you fight the process, the longer you delay the promise. Trust is not just believing God will do it. It's submitting to how he chooses to do it. You may not like the route. It may be longer than you wanted, more painful than you expected, lonelier than you planned. But if you'll walk it with him, he'll bring you out stronger, wiser, and ready for what's next. There is no wasted press with God. So don't be disappointed because the process doesn't feel good. The pain is proof that something is being formed. The stretching is a sign that expansion is coming. And the fact that it doesn't look like what you expected doesn't mean it's not God. In fact, it just might be the clearest evidence that it is. Don't be disappointed with your God. He's working behind the scenes. Trust the process, because the promise still stands. Some of the greatest disappointments in life come not from what others did to us, but from what we assumed God would do and how we thought he would do it. We didn't hear him wrong, but we expected him to move a certain way on a certain timeline, And when he didn't, we grew wary. We thought the storm would pass quicker. We thought the healing would be instant. We thought the door would open easily. But here's the true thing of your delay is not your denial. There is a difference between no and not yet. But when you're in a holding pattern, when the prayers seem to echo and nothing is shifting, it's easy to confuse silence for absence. You begin to question not just the situation, but the God who holds it. But hear me, just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. A God is not ignoring you. He's preparing everything in the background for the fullness of his timing. If the door hasn't opened, maybe it's not locked. It's just not your time to walk through it yet. If the answer hasn't come, maybe he's still setting the stage. Sometimes we think delay means rejection, but delay is often the space God uses to mature your character and align your purpose. And the worst thing you could do is walk away from God in the middle of a delay that was meant to prepare you for destiny. David was anointed king as a boy, but he didn't wear the crown for years. In between the promise and the fulfillment was a stretch of time filled with betrayal, hiding, heartbreak, and training. God was not slow. He was strategic. He was building in David the strength and humility required for the throne. God's timing doesn't just change things. It changes you. You may be in a season where everyone around you seems to be moving forward and you feel stuck. They're getting married, starting families, launching businesses while you're still praying for clarity. Don't let comparison corrupt your confidence. You're not late. You're not behind. You're on heaven's timeline, not man's calendar. Our God is not in a hurry when he's building something that's meant to last. We must learn to wait without resentment, to trust without deadlines, to walk by faith and not by sight. Because if you give up in the delay, you forfeit what was already on the way. If you get bitter in the waiting, you'll miss the beauty of the arrival. And some of us are closer than we think. But because it's been long, because it's been hard, we're tempted to settle or stop short. Don't do it. Don't allow temporary delay to birth permanent doubt. There's something powerful about staying planted when nothing seems to be growing, about showing up when you feel overlooked, about praising while you're still in process. That's when God sees you're not just in love with the blessing, you're in love with the blesser. You're not just seeking answers, you're seeking him. And that's when the delay becomes holy ground, because he may not have changed the situation yet, but he's changing you. So lift your head, wipe your tears, and lean back into trust. If he said it, he will do it. If he promised it, he will perform it. But he will do it when the time is right. And when that time comes, it won't be rushed, it won't be late, and it won't be small. God does not deliver in fragments. He delivers in fullness. Don't be disappointed with your God. He hasn't forgotten you. He hasn't forsaken you. He's just writing a story that takes time. And when the chapter turns, you'll understand why you had to wait.